This video is going to go through divided bar graphs and sector graphs. So a divided bar graph must have a title. It doesn't need an axis, but when constructing the graph, the first thing you need to do is determine what length you want for the bar, and then calculate, therefore, what fraction of that length each section will have. The sector graph must have a title or heading. It doesn't need an axis, and then we have to use maths to determine the size of each sector. So we've got to work out what fraction of 360 degrees they are. So our first worked example is to construct a sector graph of the data set at the top of the page. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to work out what is the total number of pets, which is 260. We have 260 pets altogether. So then to be able to graph this on the sector graph, what we have to do is we have to work out how much each, or how many degrees each section needs. So we need to work out the fraction and then the angle. So for our dog, our fraction is going to be 78 out of 260. For our cat, it's 65 out of 260. For our bird, it's 39. For our rabbit, it's 26 out of 260. And for our other, it's 52 out of 260. Now, to work out the angle, what we need to do is we need to multiply that fraction by 360. So we times each of them by 360. And that will then give us the angle. So then our angles will equal 108 degrees, 90 degrees, 54 degrees, 36 degrees, and 72 degrees. What we then need to do is you need to use a protractor to then measure each of those angles and draw them in a circle. Now, I've got a sector graph here and it's broken down, each increment is 10 degrees, just to make it easier for me to show this as an example. So our first section that I'm going to draw is for the cat, which is 90 degrees, because I know that straight away that's going to go across here. And so that section here is 90 degrees, and that shows the sector for the cats. Our next sector that we can draw is for the dogs, which is 108 degrees. And so that will come from the middle down here. So that will be our sector for dogs. Our next section is other, which is 72. I'll make that blue. That will come from here across to the middle. That's 72 degrees in there for our other section. We then have 54 degrees for the birds. And then our final piece of our sector is the 36 degrees for the rabbits. Now, we have that sector graph. If you just gave that graph to someone, they would just see different sections with different colors. They don't actually know what they represent. So it's really important that with our sector graph, you must also have a key that accompanies it. So I'm going to put the key over on the right-hand side, but normally it would be next to the graph. Just because of where the working is, we'll put it over to the side. So over here we have our key. And so our animals are dog, cat, bird, rabbit, and other. And then next to them, we can just put the colors. So our dog was red. Our cat is yellow. Our bird is green. Our rabbit is purple. And our other is blue. And so that key just allows people to know what's going on. It's also important in this graph, as it is with other graphs, to have a title. So here you would just have types of pets. And that's our sector graph example. Okay, a divided bar graph example. So we want to draw a graph of the vegetables and the breakdown of what vegetables were picked from the garden. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to work out, okay, what's the total number of vegetables that was picked from the garden on this day. So in this case here, it's 60. Now, because it's 60, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my scale factor a sixth. So what that means is I'm going to divide 60 by 6, and so I'm going to make my graph, so my rectangle is 10 centimeters long. And so we draw the rectangle so it's 10 centimeters. Now you'll have nice straight lines because you'll use a ruler and it's a bit easier to do on paper. So we've got a 10 centimeter rectangle here. What that then means is that for each of the values given to me in the table, I have to multiply them by that scale factor. So I need to multiply each one by a sixth. So what I can do is you can either put it in the table at the top, or just on the side, you can just show you working. So for tomatoes, I need to do 20 times by a sixth. For carrots, I need to do 12 times a sixth. For cucumbers, I need to do 8 times a sixth. For lettuce, I need to do 10 times a sixth. And for pumpkin, it's also 10 times a sixth. Okay, so then our values for each of these, so our tomatoes, it'll be 3.33 recurring. Our carrots is 2. Our cucumbers is 1.3 recurring. Our lettuce is 1.67 approximately. And our pumpkin is approximately 1.67. Okay, so I then need to graph each of them. So the first bit I put on there in the red, that is for our carrots, which takes up 2 increments on our 10 increment rectangle. So in the red there is our carrots. We then have tomatoes, which takes up 3.3 recurring. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then a third. So that section there is our tomatoes. Our lettuce then takes up 1 2/3. So we've already got 2/3 there, and then we go another increment. So we've got 1 2/3, and that's our lettuce. You've then got 1 2/3 is also pumpkin. And then 1 1/3 is cucumber. Now it's important that on your graph you make sure that those measurements of the thirds are accurate. So you would use your ruler, making sure that you are a third of the way through that increment as well. Now, just as we did with our sector graph, you also need to make sure that you have a key for your divided bar graph as well. So on the side here, if we have a key, our different veggies, we've got tomatoes, carrots, cucumbers, lettuce, and pumpkin. Now we did our carrots first, which is in the red. We then did our tomatoes in the blue. We then did our lettuce in the green. We then did the cucumbers. Sorry, we then did the pumpkin in the orange, and then we did the cucumbers in the purple at the end. So you'll just have next to your key, so then people know as they read it. Now the final thing that you need on this one is obviously a title. So you would go vegetables picked. And that's your divided bar graph.